to get close to him, that he didn't stop them. But tonight, what about those Gold Star families? Has anyone reached out to them? Could they have been exposed? John Carl standing by for us. We're also tracking that hurricane now closing in on the U.S., expected to slam into the U.S. tomorrow. Ginger Z and Rob Marciano both live tonight. Here in New York City, the alarming COVID outbreaks, the new hotspots tonight. Hundreds of schools closed. 35 states reporting a rise in hospitalizations. Wisconsin, for one, about to open a field hospital. New video released tonight in the Breonna Taylor case, what it shows. And America Strong tonight, the grandfather, the baseballs, and the note. And what happened after our story.
Listen up!
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It is great to have you with us here on a very busy Thursday night. That major hurricane about to hit the U.S. The second presidential debate now called off after President Trump objected to it being a virtual town hall to protect everyone. But we're going to begin tonight with that alleged terror plot and the chilling plan. The FBI says it stopped before it could be carried out. A plan to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and then what they were planning to do to her. 13 suspects arrested, including 7 alleged members of a right-wing militia group. The FBI and state authorities conducting a series of raids in Michigan. Those 13 suspects taken into custody, 7 of them alleged members of that right-wing militia group. Governor Whitmer has been the target of protests since last spring over restrictions aimed to stop the spread of COVID amid one of the early outbreaks. Michigan, of course, a hot spot at the time. Today, Governor Whitmer thanking authorities for protecting her and her family, but went on to talk about white supremacists in this country. And the president, who she pointed out was asked to condemn white supremacists on that debate stage. You'll remember the president saying, "Stand back and stand by." Our Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas leading us off tonight.
The alleged plot nightmarish.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
The FBI and state police seen here raiding a home and detaining an individual took action after the men met this week to exchange tactical gear and to pool their money to allegedly buy explosives. The mission? Attack the governor before Election Day. Authorities claim the planning was months in the making, with the men even going to the governor's vacation home twice to conduct surveillance. 2 of the suspects allegedly had a plan to create a diversion.
Discussed detonating explosive devices to divert police from the area of the home.
This was a highly dangerous group. They were well armed, they were training, they had a plan, and they were prepared to carry out their attack.
According to the FBI, the men were apparently angry because of Governor Whitmer's restrictions during the coronavirus pandemic, including those on gyms. Tensions have been high in Michigan for weeks, with militia members, some of them armed, at one point descending on the State House last spring, intimidating lawmakers. The FBI infiltrated and wiretapped one of the groups after getting a tip that the men were allegedly plotting against police and planning to attack the state capitol in an attempt to overthrow the government. With an informant listening in, they call Whitmer a tyrant. One of the suspects saying, "Snatch and grab the governor. Just grab the expletive." They allegedly wanted to take her to a secret location in Wisconsin for a trial that would end in execution.
All of us in Michigan can disagree about politics, but those disagreements should never, ever amount to violence.
An angry Governor Whitmer today calling out President Trump.
Just last week, the President of the United States stood before the American people and refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups like these 2 Michigan militia groups.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it?
I
Go
would
ahead,
say,
Texas, and right from
Proud
the
Boys,
left.
stand back and stand by.
At one point, the president tweeted there was a need to liberate Michigan.
So let's get with us to Pierre Thomas tonight in Washington. Pierre, where does this case stand tonight?
David, the investigation is ongoing and there could be more charges. It's not quite over.
Pierre, you just reported here weeks ago in this broadcast that the FBI Director Christopher Wray had warned of this very kind of threat.
Yeah, there have been a variety of people and groups with grievances, some of them radicalizing online, others getting together to share their frustrations. They range from white supremacist groups to anti-government radicals from the left and to the right, and some of them are even anarchists, kind of a witch's brew. The FBI has the difficult job of trying to figure out when they go from radical speech to something potentially violent, David.
Just an alarming story today unfolding, Pierre. Thank you. We're going to turn now to fast-moving developments in the race for the White House. The debate commission revealing today their plan to make next week's presidential debate virtual. The commission saying to protect everyone. Joe Biden saying yes. President Trump.
A witch's brew. I've never heard it quite that way, but I guess that could be interpreted in that type of a setting, especially whenever you have a group of people that claims that they're praising the governor and for what she has done, while the whole time being plotting to overtake her. And I'm sure with these types of groups out there, or gangs, whatever you want to call them, they'll probably, as the money gets tighter and things get worse pertaining to the coronavirus, there will probably be more events similar or possibly even just exactly like this one. It kind of reminds me of some of those science fiction movies that you watch towards somebody going to hold hostage a whole city because they're holding the computer dialogue and possibly shutting down a lot of containers that if you shut the valves down, it could possibly cause them to explode or something. In other words, Wi-Fi terrorism. Unbelievable in the times that we're living in right now, and unbelievable what people are actually willing to do just for either the almighty dollar or just to try to get their message across to the general public. Unbelievable in the times that we're living in right now. Unbelievable.
Pulling out saying virtual isn't necessary, that he feels great. Here's Mary Bruce.
Tonight, the fate of future debates is up in the air.
We don't know what the president's going to do. Change his mind every second.
It started with a surprise announcement that next Thursday's presidential debate would be virtual. The commission saying the decision was made to protect the health and safety of all involved. The Biden campaign was open to it, but Trump almost immediately shot it down. Trump, still battling the virus, says a virtual forum is unnecessary.
A virtual debate is a joke. There's no reason. I'm in great shape.
With no clear solution, last night's vice presidential debate could be the last face-off of this campaign.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. They were informed that it's lethal in consequence, that it is airborne, that it will affect young people, and that it would be contracted because it is airborne. And they knew what was happening, and they didn't tell you.
Mike Pence, the head of the coronavirus task force on defense.
And the reason why that they didn't want to tell us, because they thought maybe people would try to charge them with falsifying files. What exactly is falsifying files? Well, that's the exact same thing that the idiots up here in Martin, Tennessee, pertaining to the Martin PD, and Judge Tommy Moore, and my attorney, Benjamin Dempsey, wanted to get away with towards charging me for falsifying files, which basically means to create a panic in the eyes of society, and there be no authentic danger as far as you creating that panic. In other words, if you stand in a theater crying fire, 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 and there is no fire, and you create this panic to the point that there's a stampede, and in the stampede a lot of people gets injured, then you are looking at terrorist type implications of being a terrorist. So that's what that they was scared of. They was scared that if they cried fire, 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 they would be charged with a charge. Thing about it is, This was the time that they should have been crying fire. This was the time that they should have listened to the experts that told them that the coronavirus was more than just a mutating bug, but it was absolutely lethal and that it is a killer disease. But rather than them being honest with the American people, they decided, well, let's play tiptoe to the tulips and let's take it day for day and see what happens. During the results of seeing all them hundreds and thousands of people dying up there in New York City, they still remained quiet about the disease. There's no doubt, no matter what president that we had, he or she was going to be thrown for a loop pertaining to dealing with something that by and large we haven't seen on this scale since the great 1918 pandemic flu. But at the same time, when you know whenever you know that you know that you know that what you're dealing with is lethal and it needs to be dealt with very, very cautiously pertaining to wearing masks and making sure that you clean up after yourself, pertaining to washing your hands, sanitizing yourself, and suppressing that information, suppressing the information that you knowed was real and was true, then you reach into another category of being reckless or careless. That's the reason why I made mention that the president should be charged, or should have been charged, with reckless endangerment, and that was about a week before he himself ever caught the disease in the White House. The people that are talking about storms, they're talking about fires, they're talking about diseases, they're talking about things other than construction industry talk, are not just talking to hear themselves talk. They're actually trying to help humanity. That's the same way with the windmill ministries. There was no justification in Martin, Tennessee, whacking that out of proportion simply because I had told a teller working in a convenience store that there was a great deal of controversy in my life, that there was going to be an explosion of talk pertaining to my life, and that I was liable to wind up on the Channel 6 News. Especially whenever the authorities from Martin went all the way to Huntington, Tennessee, and nabbed me up and questioned me about my intent. There, right then and there, is whenever it should have got cut off, and they should have took me back to Huntington, Tennessee, where I was working for First Choice Body Shop, Jimmy Darnell and David Lloyd, and that should have been the end of it. But instead, it cost me $1,000 for an attorney, cost me $1,000 just to get out of jail, it cost me my marriage, and it cost me having to move plumb out of the area up into Davidson County in the fall of 2005. That's what it cost of a bunch of people that was trying to criminalize myself simply because of making the statement that there was a great deal of controversy in my life. And of course, we see that my prophecy did in fact come true in my life pertaining to what went on 4 years later in 2009 out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, towards me actually winding up on the Channel 9, Channel 13, Channel 11, Channel 7 News. Their local state Senate news out in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And of course that branched out and went to other different medias and different news agencies. But I believe the president was in fear of possibly being charged of the same similar type charge, which is a drastic charge. When you try to charge somebody with the same type of implications as a terrorist, that is a very, very serious charge. Just like what they tried to do to me in 2007 up around the Kentucky Dam, up in Livingston County, up towards Grand Rivers and Benton and Calvert City and Paducah, Kentucky, towards trying to make me out to be a homegrown terrorist. And then, of course, it happened again in 2009 while I was actually out in Oklahoma doing my own personal investigations. So, yes, there's a pattern here towards a group of people that was out for my jugular vein. They wanted to completely not just have society think that I was crazy as far as marking me as me being psychologically, emotionally, chemically imbalanced, as far as me being unstable, but I was dealing with a group of people that wanted to destroy my life because they did not want this ministry to prosper and grow, and they did not want this ministry to fulfill itself. These are the very people that talk about they want peace, but in reality they don't want peace. They want it that in their pockets while they laugh while everybody else suffers. I could go through a whole list of names of the people that I've had to brush up against that has tried to destroy me. Whole list of names.
I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first.
On healthcare, Kamala Harris took Pence to task for trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act. The court set to hear a case that could invalidate the law just 1 week after the election.
If you have a pre-existing condition, heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, they're coming for you. If you love someone who has a pre-existing condition, they're coming for you. If you are under the age of 26 on your parents' coverage, they're coming for you.
Pence adamant they have a plan to protect people with pre-existing conditions, but he couldn't say what that plan is.
President Trump and I have a plan to improve health care and to protect pre-existing conditions for every American.
And as Republicans try to push Judge Amy Coney Barrett through the Senate confirmation process, Pence pressed Harris to say if a Biden administration would expand the Supreme Court.
Well, I'd like you to answer the question.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking. I'm speaking. Okay. Abraham Lincoln was up for re-election, and it was 27 days before the election, and a seat became open on the United States Supreme Court. Abraham Lincoln's party was in charge not only of the White House, but the Senate. But Honest Abe said it's not the right thing to do.
Harris never giving a clear answer on packing the court. Today, the president took aim.
This monster that was on stage with Mike Pence, who destroyed her last night, by the way, but this monster, everything she said is a lie.
It's despicable. It's despicable. It's so beneath the office of the presidency. And the American people are sick and tired of it.
So let's get to Mary Bruce back with us tonight, covering every step of this campaign. All of this fast moving today. Both candidates tonight now making their own plans instead of that debate. The president with a rally and Joe Biden deciding to do a town hall, but here on ABC instead.
Yeah, David, instead of debating, President Trump is going to hold a campaign rally. Sources tell us it depends on his health, but we do know that Trump has been itching to get back out on the campaign trail, while Joe Biden will still be participating in a town hall. But instead of it being at that formal debate, he'll be answering voters' questions right here on ABC. David.
All right, we'll be here too. Mary Bruce tonight. Thank you. Now more on that outbreak linked to the White House. We know now at least 34 people have tested positive, while the president in an interview today said there's nothing wrong when it comes to his condition. In a video he posted on Twitter, he acknowledged he had been very sick. And what he also said in the interview about a White House meeting with Gold Star families more than a week ago, that they wanted to get close to him. He didn't stop them. But we asked tonight about those families. Has anyone reached out to them? Could they have been exposed? Here's our chief White House correspondent, Jonathan Carl.
Exactly 1 week after he said he tested positive for COVID-19, the president today declared himself cured.
I think I'm better. When to a point where I'd love to do a rally tonight. I wanted to do one last night, but I think I'm better. I feel perfect. There's nothing wrong.
Although in a video released today but recorded yesterday on the south lawn of the White House, he acknowledged he had been very sick.
I went into the hospital a week ago. I was very sick. And I took this medicine, and it was incredible. It was incredible.
In reality, we still know very little about the president's true medical condition. He says he is still on the powerful steroid dexamethasone, but his doctor has not taken questions since Monday. And the White House is still refusing to say when the president last tested negative, something that is critically important in determining who he may have infected, or even whether he already had the disease during his debate last week with Joe Biden.
I can't reveal that at this time. The doctors would like to keep it private.
But there is no reason the president can't release that information himself. The president today implied he was infected on September 27th at an event with families of fallen service members at the White House.
I met with Gulf Star families. I didn't want to cancel that. They're telling the story of their son who just died, or daughter, or husband, and I can't back up, Maria, and say, give me room, I want room. Give me 12 feet. Stay 12 feet away when you talk. They come within an inch of my face sometimes. They want to hug me and they want to kiss me. And they do. It's obviously dangerous.
The event with Gold Star families was after the Rose Garden event with Amy Coney Barrett, but before the president traveled to Cleveland for the debate with Biden, and to a rally in Minnesota, and later to a fundraiser in New Jersey.
So the question is this: how come Secret Service, the people that are selected or elected, whichever word you want to use, in protecting the president, how come they allow for the president to participate in such social graces with people getting that close to him? I'm going to tell you why. Because the president is a bull in a china cabinet and can't nobody control him. And whenever something like this happens, he wants to blame somebody else, so he's blaming Secret Service. But yet, no, you let Secret Service come down on him towards telling him how the cow's going to eat the cabbage, and the next thing you know, Donald Trump starts spewing off, well, I'll fire you, I'll get rid of you, I'll get rid of you, I'll get rid of you. So they're dealing with a hopeless situation, somebody that don't read the manuscript, somebody that don't take advice, somebody that whenever you tell them to sit down, they stand up, whenever you tell them to stand up, they sit down. It's really sad. It's like Joe Biden said, every freaking minute something different comes out of his mouth. He steadily contradicted himself and telling people how bad they are and how rotten they are and how bad of a job that they've done. It's just negative, 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 negative. It's actually got a word in the medical arena towards somebody that's this way. It's called degrading. You want to go around degrading everybody and everything for what that they have done or what that they haven't done. In other words, you ain't got not one good word to say. As my grandpa used to say, son, if they was to hang you after a trial, you would complain if they hung you with a new rope. In other words, my grandpa was trying to say, shut up. Quit looking at the negative. Quit complaining about everything. I realize that my grandpa may not have should have used that type of vocabulary in expressing his point. But you know what? I got the point. I got exactly what my grandfather was telling me. It's like, Dennis, you need to quit complaining. You need to quit arguing and complaining with everything and everybody, because can't everybody be wrong and you be right all the time? Same way with Donald Trump.
According to a government memo obtained by ABC News, 34 people connected to the White House have tested positive. And we've learned the head of White House security has been hospitalized with COVID-19 since the end of September. Republican Senator Mitch McConnell revealed today that he has not been to the White House in over 2 months because he has not been comfortable with the steps taken there to prevent the spread of the virus.
I haven't actually been to the White House since August the 6th because my impression was their approach to how to handle this was different from mine and what I insisted that we do in the Senate, which is to wear masks and practice social distancing.
The words from Mitch McConnell. Let's get to John Carl with us live again tonight. And John, the president saying there that those Gold Star families wanted to get close to him, that he didn't stop them. But we were all curious, what about the flip side? Has the White House reached out to those Gold Star families in case they were the ones exposed to the virus?
David, we found out that the White House did reach out to the head of the group that brought the Gold Star families to the White House. That group then in turn contacted each and every one of the families that was at that event, and I am happy to report that none of the Gold Star families have either tested positive or displayed any symptoms consistent with coronavirus.
All right, that is really encouraging news. All right, John, thanks. We're going to turn now to the
Absolutely.
hurricane bearing down on the U.S., a record 10th named storm to strike the U.S. just this season alone. Delta gaining strength tonight back to a Cat 3 now, 115-mile-an-hour winds. On track to hit nearly the same spot in Louisiana where Hurricane Laura struck. Ginger Z and Rob Marciano both live from Louisiana tonight. And Ginger, I know you've got the newest track.
I do, and where I'm standing here in Delcambre, Louisiana, could see up to 9 feet of inundation. So storm surge is going to be a big problem with this storm, and I want to take you to that track, which goes just east of Cameron, so close to Laura's. Up to Alexandria, we even have the hurricane warnings, but the tropical storm warnings go from New Orleans back to Galveston. Wind-wise, it's 24 hours away, so we're talking about landfall tomorrow night. That's when the winds will be at their heftiest. Port Arthur near 60 there, the gust near Lake Charles could be up to 80. If you don't have a roof from Laura, that is not going to hold up well. It's going to stay windy and tropical storm-like all the way into western Mississippi. And then finally the surge, 7 to 11 feet, the peak, David.
Our incredible weather team making this trip again. Ginger, I know Rob's also down there with you, and Rob's in Lake Charles, Louisiana. We know Hurricane Laura just devastated that city 6 weeks ago. You know, we can see the damage right there behind you, Rob. We're thinking about those families about to face this all over again.
I know, David. The last thing this area needs is another major storm. The recoveries.
You know, if you listen to hurricane hunters and tornado hunters and tornado people, they'll tell you that the biggest problem with a tornado is that after it has dismantled, regardless whether it be a forest or a group of houses, and once it starts getting that debris field going with the wind speed going around and around, that the debris field actually turns into like a bulldozer to the point that whatever was loose on the front end becomes swallowed up in the debris field. Once it gets into the debris field, then it starts knocking down more forest or more buildings, kind of like a big bulldozer, chopping its way through wherever that it wants to go. So if you'll put that in the same concept towards what I'm thinking about this hurricane, you see all this in behind this guy right here? This is all debris. Debris that hasn't been cleaned up yet. Tin, wood, shingles, more tin. You let 115 to 125 mile an hour winds grab a hold of this and start twirling this around and turn this into a debris field, you're going to see destruction in this area like you've never seen on a hurricane or a tornado, because it's basically going to take the debris that's already laying there that is not attached. It's not bolted, it's not screwed, it's not nailed, it's not attached to nothing. And once that wind catches all that, it could turn that into a massive, massive mess. In addition to all the tornadoes that usually strike away from a bigger storm such as a hurricane. So, I don't know. I would not remotely suggest for anybody to be in that area. Anybody. Because like I said, once it picks that debris up and it turns it into a bulldozer, a monster-eating machine, then you got not just 125 mile an hour winds, but you got 125 mile an hour winds with all that debris that's floating around with that 125 mile an hour winds, that just about anything that it touches slams up against, dismantles, breaks loose. It will add insult to injury pertaining to the damage. So my advice towards anybody would be get the heck out of there as quick as you can, because you're looking at something that could very well turn into something unlike anybody's ever seen. I mean, it's one thing for a hurricane to create that debris, but it's another thing for a hurricane to walk up on top of another hurricane that's already got the debris already dismantled and loose. Wow. That's going to be a sad situation for a lot of people, because a lot of those homes that are now fixable won't be repairable. They won't be repairable. And it won't just be because of the moisture content, the rain getting into the building, but it will literally be because of the debris field that will finish collapsing the buildings. And of course, if there's anybody around or inside the buildings, they're going to be trapped inside the building. They're going to be hurt or possibly killed.
Since Hurricane Laura has been painfully slow, so many businesses look like this collapsed tuxedo shop, and every street and every neighborhood has rooftops that are covered in blue tarps.
Look at that. Every roof that you see is vulnerable. And you're talking about going to pile drive another hurricane on top of the crippled area that's already been devastated. You talk about, I mean, you take a house, all right? Let's say it is still standing. Let's say the insurance looks at it. All right, we're going to give you 50% damage on a $100,000 house. We'll cut you a check for $50,000 tomorrow. You can straighten everything out, put you in some plyboard, put you in some sheetrock, put you in some carpet, make sure the wiring's all right. You're good to go. Thing about it is, a lot of those homes have been structurally moved. The nails, the screws, the bolts, they're no longer clamped to one board to another board like they was before the first storm. And they may not have moved, but maybe a quarter to a half an inch. Enough that you can't tell it from down on the ground. But I guarantee you, it has moved enough to weaken that structure to the point, unless that structure is completely submerged in the right type of material towards enclosing it back up again, you talk about a structure that's going to be vulnerable. It's going to be vulnerable because it hadn't had time to heal. It hadn't had time to rebuild.
Roadways that are lined with piles of debris, neither of which can handle or are at all safe in hurricane force.
It'll rip that tarpaulin off of there. 35, 40, 50 mile an hour winds will rip the tarpaulin off. So once the tarpaulin's ripped off, now you're automatically got the exposure of more rain damage. Whenever the tarpaulin gets ripped off, you automatically have exposure to more water damage. Water damage in the ceiling, water damage on the rafters, water damage on the walls, water damage on the floor. But look at all that debris. 125 mile an hour will take what you're looking at and turn it into basically like flying bullets or flying bombs Even the brick that you see piled up down there on the bottom, right here. You get a strong enough force wind, it'll pick that brick right there up and chunk that brick. That looks like a microwave. All this is lightweight stuff. 25, 30 mile an hour winds. I have it blowed all over 15 counties wide. That's insulation right there. It'll probably wind up in Alabama somewhere or Georgia. It's just a bad deal. A bad deal. If they know that this was coming, maybe they could have got on the debris removal a little quicker. But once more, that's a lot easier said than done, because whenever you got that much debris, you got to figure out where you're going to put it. You got to know how to create a debris field. The debris field's got to be able to breathe, because the debris field creates gases. You got to have somebody that's willing to sell you a piece of property that will turn it into a debris field, because once that debris field is turned into a debris field, it'll be a debris field for the next 50, 100 years, until finally all that stuff rots and turns back into dirt again. It's a sad situation. It's a horrible situation.
The mayor telling me today there are some buildings across the city that are compromised, so he's asking residents to get out for their safety, as we expect yet another hurricane to hit this town tomorrow.
All them buildings is compromised. Like I said, if a 2x4 on all 4 points of the house, all the 2x4s that's going into the main beam, if they have been compromised a quarter to a half an inch on every point, that means you could literally take that house and probably with a regular automobile and start pushing on the corner of that house and do it 2 or 3 times, and you would literally watch that whole house rock back and forth just with minimum force of pushing against one of the corners of that house, because it done already been compromised. Now, if the house was a new house and it had never been compromised, not only would you not be able to do that with the car, but you probably wouldn't be able to do that with a larger structure, unless it was something like a crane or a bulldozer. And naturally, something like that, you're going to be able to push it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, to the point that you start seeing the whole building start swaying. And at that point in time, that's whenever the building started compromising, and that's whenever the boards that was tightly knit together now start separating 1/10 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch. And of course, the more that they separate, the looser that the house becomes. The looser that the house becomes, the more critical that the house becomes in collapsing or falling up onto itself, because now the whole structure's been compromised.
That flying debris, a real concern. All right, Rob, Ginger, and our crews in both.
Let's back it up. I missed that part. They was talking about the debris.
Neighborhood has rooftops that are covered in blue tarps, or roadways that are lined with piles of debris, neither of which can handle or are at all safe in hurricane force winds. The mayor telling me today there are some buildings across the city that are compromised, so he's asking residents to get out for their safety, as we expect yet another hurricane to hit this town tomorrow.
That flying debris, a real concern. All right, Rob, Ginger, and our crews in both locations, stay safe, and we really appreciate it. The news continues, and in New York City tonight, there are alarming outbreaks of COVID-19, new hotspots that have forced officials now to close hundreds of schools. And across the country tonight, 35 states now reporting a rise in hospitalizations. Wisconsin, for one, about to open that field hospital. Here's ABC's Stephanie Ramos.
Tonight, strict new coronavirus lockdowns taking effect in hard-hit neighborhoods in New York City, sparking outrage. Hundreds of protesters demonstrating in Brooklyn, starting fires, even assaulting a journalist. City and state officials taking urgent action to crush flare-ups in so-called red zones, shutting down non-essential businesses, limiting capacity at houses of worship to a maximum of 10 people, and closing more than 300 schools.
Did any of us sign up for perpetual lockdown forever? I think not.
Tonight, hospitalizations on the rise in 35 states. In Wisconsin, the state set to open this 530-bed field hospital next week.
Every region in Wisconsin has hospitals reporting
Oh my God. This is all erupting again. All over. This is the second wave that's starting.
current and imminent staffing shortages.
In New Mexico, the virus infecting 6 members of one family, including Leo Lugo. Relatives say the beloved special education teacher tragically died Sunday.
Look, they took my brother, and it took him only a week to go.
As for a COVID vaccine, the Health and Human Services Secretary today promising 100 million doses for the most vulnerable by the end of the year and for every American by spring of 2021. Vaccine makers emphasizing timing will be determined by science, not politics, David.
All right, Stephanie Ramos with us again tonight on this. Stephanie, thank you. When we come back here, new video in the Breonna Taylor case and what it shows, and a plane off the runway, injuries on board and on the ground.
People have
50 body camera videos have now been Breonna Taylor case. More than 50 body camera videos have now been made public, including a SWAT team moving through Taylor's apartment after she was shot and motionless on the floor. 4 minutes in, someone checks her pulse. The judge says she will soon decide whether to allow a grand juror to speak publicly. The state AG now arguing against that. When we come back tonight, that plane off the runway during takeoff and reports of injuries tonight.
Chicago.
With Alka-Seltzer QuickBooks.
Long commercial.
In Palm Beach County, Florida tonight, authorities say a small plane went off the runway into a pond during takeoff. 9 people hospitalized, including 2 bystanders who'd been trying to help. When we come back here tonight, the grandfather, his note, and what's happened now.
Grandfather note. What are they talking about?
Tonight at 6 on New.
Now offering Finally, the grandfather, the bucket of baseballs, and his note. It was last week here we showed you that note, written by a grandfather and taped to a bucket of baseballs. Randy Long, the grandfather from Montgomery, Alabama, wrote, "Free. Hope someone can use some of these baseballs in the batting cages. I found them cleaning my garage. I pitched them to my son and grandson for countless rounds. My son is now 46 years old and my grandson is 23 years old. I am 72, and what I won't give to pitch a couple of buckets to them. They both moved away. If you're a father, cherish these times. You won't believe how quickly they will be gone. God bless." He left that bucket at the ballpark. Tonight, that grandfather, right here.
Hello, David.
Randy has been so moved by the reaction. He and his son Jason and his grandson Ethan all getting together for batting practice.
I'm certainly happy the way this has affected a lot of people that we've heard from.
Including Brian Robinson and his son Carter. They were the ones who found the bucket and note, writing, "His heartfelt act of kindness has touched us a lot." His grandson Ethan, back with us tonight.
Hey, David. The main thing I'd like people to take away from this is to just make those memories with your family. Don't take them for granted because they'll be gone before you know it.
A grandfather's note when we all needed it. Good night.
Absolutely.
Tuesday. The rumors are
All the
true.
bad news. Out of all the bad news, we finally got some sort of good news. Wow. And we sure right. I mean,
Back up, stand 10 feet.
the moments and the memories that we have today are here today and gone tomorrow.
You know, I just can't do it. They come within an inch of my face sometimes. They want to hug me and they want to kiss me. And they do. And frankly, I'm not telling them to back up. I'm not doing it.
In a statement to NBC News, the Greatest Generations Foundation, a veterans charity organization involved in organizing the Gold Star event, said all the attendees tested negative before the ceremony and all are doing well and exhibit no symptoms of COVID-19. Joining me now to respond is Senator Tammy Duckworth of Illinois and a Iraq War veteran and Purple Heart recipient. I have ruined the clock on the show this morning, going a little over, so I'm just going to let you respond, Senator.
Well, we're going to end this here. Thanks again to my viewers. Good luck to all of us, and shalom. Pray for the people in Louisiana. Pray for the people in New York. Pray for the victims pertaining to the fires. Pray for the children that's been affected by all this. Pray for the COVID patients. And just pray for one another.